Jared Woodfield and Terry Yates, who are attorneys that are going to talk to you about what legal remedies, if any, do you have to get whole if you didn't have insurance? And if you did have insurance, what legal remedies do you have? And the goal in this is for you to come away and say, you know, I've got a plan. I know what we can do, and that's why we're having the program. So I'm so glad y'all are here because I'm excited about it. It's going to be great. Let me talk to you first about health hazards of water-damaged homes. The problem in water-damaged homes is the biotoxins. Those are biological toxins. And these toxins are produced by the mold. And did anybody raise your hand if when you went in your flooded home you didn't have any mold? It's everywhere, isn't it? It's amazing how fast that grows. And they're all different types of molds, and I talk about them in here. But the molds produce mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are mold toxins. And in general, we call these volatile organic chemicals that the molds produce, and they're toxins. Toxin means they're poison. And also, if you had black water in your home, there's three kinds of water: white water, gray water, and black water. White water is what you get out of your faucet. Gray water is what comes out of the washing machine. And black water is what comes out of the sewer. And in many of the homes that I visited last week and worked in, it was black water was in there. That was sewage in there. So that carries additionally pathogenic bacteria into the home. So the mold gloms on and sporates, and those mold spores get everywhere in your house. So I know you think, well, I'll just cut out 4 feet right here, and then I'm going to leave everything else because it only got 1 foot. That mold gets up in behind the walls. And I'm going to have a remediator talk to you about what you need to do. But the big problem is if you get mold infestation in your house, it gets up in the vents, it gets up in the attic. How do you get rid of it? And the longer that mold is in there, the more dangerous it is. And some of you, I have some people I know that just got in their homes this week. It had been flooded for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Well, you can imagine the mold infestation they have and the bacterial infestation in those homes. And they give off biotoxins, volatile organic chemicals. And they are, when you walk into a home, did anybody smell something rancid or musty? Yeah, right. Those are volatile organic chemicals that are being made and produced by bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, and by mold. If you can smell it, it's in your system. If it's in your system, those biotoxins are lipophilic. They love fat. They go to areas of fat, and that's where they reside because they dissolve in fat. And guess what organ carries the most fat in it? It's the brain. So some individuals have a gene called the DRBQ gene, and I talk about it in here. 25% of the population has that gene. If you have that gene, you're unable to break down the toxins, and they end up getting in your system, and they're getting in the brain, and they can cause a host of health problems. They can cause irritability, chronic headaches. They can cause you to be paranoid or panic attacks. They can lead to multiple sclerosis. They can lead to Parkinson problems. And you go to most doctors, and they don't know what in the world. They don't know about mold. They don't know about biotoxins. They don't know about bacterial toxins when you inhale them. They've never been taught that before. In fact, they discount it. And you'll end up getting put on a host of drugs, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. They'll put you on sleep medication. They'll put you on headache medication. I had a friend of mine who went into 14 homes last week. He says, Doc, I said, you got to watch out for that mold. You shouldn't be going in there. You've been in there. So he said, I've already gone into 14 homes this week. Well, has it caused you a problem? He said, well, the only thing I've noticed for the last 5 days, I've never had a problem, but my stomach is just irritated. I can't hardly stand it. I said, that's the mycotoxins. They get down into your system, and they can affect any organ in your body. So those of you that have allergies, you're going to have chronic drainage. You're going to get recurrent sinus problems. Those of you that have asthma, your wheezing is going to get worse if you're around this. If you have severe allergies with recurrent chronic sinus and recurrent chronic asthma and bronchitis, I would say don't go in those homes. You're just asking I know it's got to be cleaned up, and sometimes you just got to do what you have to do. But know this: it can cause severe adverse health problems that will exacerbate any current problems you have. And you'll end up at the doctor, and they're going to put you on a host full of pharmaceutical drugs, and they'll never get rid of the underlying problem. So the problem is, how do I detoxify myself? How do I get these toxins out of my body? And there are several ways that can be done, and I want to have you turn on. I gave you a handout. Turn to page. Oh, let's turn to page 6. Before we do that, let me have you look at page 3 and just look at the various symptoms you can think about. And has anybody had any of these problems develop? They have light irritation, blurred vision, burning, itchy, watery eyes, red eyes, runny nose, chronic drainage, chest congestion, bronchitis, shortness of breath, wheezing, the brain problems we talked about, confusion, can't think clearly, can't sleep, irritable, aggravated, depressed. All these things can be caused by mold toxins and mycotoxins and bacterial toxins, gastrointestinal problems. Some people get rashes. I've seen several people that have come in and said, I went and cleaned out the house, got rashes all over my body. You may get hives. You can get some numbness and tingling in your hands and your feet. Now, this doesn't necessarily happen right now when you clean it up, but if you go back and live in your home, and that's why it's important to get it remediated. If you go back and live in your home and you've got mold that's growing and producing mold spores and toxins in your home, over time, it builds up in your system, and you become toxic. So you might say, well, I went and cleaned my home. I feel pretty good right now. Yeah, but you only took 2 feet off the bottom or 4 feet. Now you got mold all up in your system. How are you going to get rid of the mold and the mold spores? How is that going to happen? And so you need to consider that. And I had a lady come up to me the other day. She said, my son's got asthma, but we're going to sleep up on the second floor. It got flooded 5 feet. Well, what do you think that's going to do to his asthma with all that mold spores? So here are some things that you can do yourself to detoxify yourself on page 6. These are ways to enhance your immune system and also help you detoxify. Vitamin D, at least 5,000 international units a day. Vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams per 25 pounds of body weight is what I recommend. You will never have a doctor who's a conventional doctor recommend vitamin C. How many of you have ever had a doctor say, why don't you take some vitamin C? But you know what? I've got doctor friends. When they get sick, I got a pulmonologist friend. When he gets sick, guess what he takes? Vitamin C by the truckloads. But they don't tell their patients because they're afraid somebody's going to say, well, he's a vitamin doctor. Well, I promote vitamins because vitamin C will strengthen your immune system. It will help your white blood cells fight infection. It also helps you produce natural occurring cortisol, which is stress hormone produced by the adrenal glands. So your adrenal glands concentrate vitamin C 100 times more than any other organ. It's a very critical. It'll also help you with heart disease. It'll help prevent developing coronary artery disease, so it's very important. Also, magnesium. Everybody in this room and all Americans are low in magnesium. We don't even get enough in our diet. It's ridiculously low. RDA, we call it the ridiculously deficient amount that the FDA recommends, and Americans don't even get that. Magnesium will help regulate heart rhythm and dilate up your arteries and also your bronchial tube, so it helps with asthma. It helps with blood pressure problems. Get a good potent B complex. We've got energy formula at Hotze Vitamins, which is a very good. It's got vitamins and minerals as well. Glutathione is a compound that's made by the body. As we get older, we make less and less. It is important for detoxification. So that's a very important supplement to take, is glutathione to help you detoxify. N-acetylcysteine is an amino acid that regenerates glutathione. Alpha-lipoic acid is also a good antioxidant. And then for those of you that have problems, if you're diagnosed with biotoxicity, cholestyramine is a prescription medication that will help suck out the biotoxins out of your system. It also sucks out cholesterol. It's an old line, 20 or 30-year-old anti-cholesterol medication. It's not a statin drug. So for people that have mold sensitivity, that have been diagnosed with that, or I should say mold toxicity, that's a good drug to help. Now, there's some testing that can be done, and that's back on page 5. So if you begin to have problems, you can be tested to see if you have the gene that adversely affects your ability to handle mold toxins. And then there's several other tests below that that can be done, performed, if your doctor knows to do them. Most doctors don't know about this. And very frankly, I have never dealt with mold toxicity. That hadn't been I do allergy, and we treat for mold allergy. But I spent, about 8 hours studying this stuff and what needs to be done if people come in and have problems, and how you can prove they have problems on these blood tests, which most doctors they're never taught about. So if you have problems because of mold sensitivity and you think it's due to that, don't let your doctor tell you it's not. Get yourself tested and treated by somebody who's willing to investigate to see if that's your underlying cause of your problem. Because the last thing you want, if you're toxic, the last thing you want to do is get on a bunch of more toxic drugs and get sicker quicker, okay? Now, does anybody have any question about this at all? About biotoxins, about pathogenic bacteria, about mold? By the way, there's a bad mold out there, Stachybotrys. You've heard that? That's the black mold, and it's bad. And what happens, it's got to be in a house that's been wet for 7 days, and it begins to grow, and it's gooey looking. I've seen it. It's slimy and black, and it kind of buds up. It looks almost like tar. But when that dries out, if you try to clean that yourself, millions of spores go everywhere, and that is the toxins that come from that are very, very toxic and very dangerous. Okay, any questions? Yes. What about the cars that got wet? Let me tell you what. If it's wet and you got it wet in your house, your furniture and all that, carpeting, get rid of it. Throw it out. Because you're going to have pathogenic bacteria in that. How are you going to get that clean? Now, obviously, if you have some clothes and they got wet, you can put them in a washing machine and close them there or send them to the cleaners. But I'm talking about rugs and furnishings and cars and all that. You're just not going to make that whole. You're not going to get it back. It's gone. Yes?
How long would it take to detoxify your body?
Well, that's a good question. How long does it take to detoxify the body? It depends how much toxins you have in your body. Everybody in this room has toxins in your body. Forget about the mold and the biotoxins. Before you even had this problem, you have toxins in your body. Where do you get them? Everything you breathe, eat, drink, and all the lotions you slather on your body have petrochemical products in those, have petrochemicals in those products. You're drinking we're giving you glass. I'm sorry that we gave you glass and plastic. I'm ashamed of that because that's got chemicals in it. You drink that. We should have had mountain and valley water. But anyway, that's what we have, so I apologize. But all these produce toxins. All these have toxins that get in your system. And then when you get these toxins in your system, what happens is it adversely affects your cell's ability to produce energy. Every cell, and every one of you has about 40 trillion cells. Every one of your cells has a power plant in it that produces energy. Just like we get this electricity. Where do we get this electricity? Where does it come from? What's the source? Does anybody know? We have a nuclear plant in southeast Texas, right? And we take nuclear energy and we convert it into electrical energy. That's a power plant. And then we're able to turn on the refrigerators and the laundry and the lights and air conditioner, and we've got electricity. Your body has power plants in every cell. Some cells have one, some cells have thousands, like your heart cells. You got to produce a lot of energy. Now, what happens in that power plant is called a mitochondria. Some of you all remember that from biology. Can you say mitochondria? Mitochondria. That's your power plant. And when you get toxins in your system, whether they're petrochemical toxins from what you breathe, eat, drink, or slather on your body, on top of it, if it's biotoxins, all those toxins poison the mitochondria, the power plants, so they produce low levels of energy. So your energy level's low. and your metabolism goes down. And so what happens? You have fatigue, you gain weight, you have a cold body temperature, it's below normal, you don't think clearly, you got brain fog, you can't sleep well, you got joint and muscle aches and pains, you may have sluggish bowels, you're puffy, pale, your hair's falling out, you feel terrible. And you go to the doctor with these symptoms, and the doctor's going to give you more chemicals. He's going to give you toxic pharmaceutical drugs, which have to be detoxified, so he adds to the allergy load. Well, this is what happens now. All of us have toxins in our system, some more than others, depending how we eat and what we slather on our body. And they built up in our system, and now we have this additional load of the biotoxins because our homes are flooded. Can you see how it's like a bucket or a glass? You keep filling it up, and eventually it overflows, and you have symptoms, and you feel terrible. Does that make sense? So it depends how much toxins you have in your system to how quickly you can get well. But if you get you need to be, the reason we use vitamins and minerals is to help gin up your detox program, to detoxify. And then you go on a yeast-free eating program, and you eat healthy, you eat organic foods. We have a whole plan on how to detoxify. And you can go to the Hotze Vitamin Store, and we have a detox program. That's a 1 month long program you can get on, but that'll be helpful to you. Yes, Julie. Yes, for infrared sauna. Because all the toxins in your system get stored in fat. You go to, if you get infrared sauna, you sweat that out. That sweats the toxins out, and then you rinse it off. So sweating is very important to get rid of the toxins. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Yes, yes, sir. I mean, repeat that question again. I'm going to have our remediator talk about bleach for cleaning and what you can do for cleaning. I'm not an expert in that. I've read about it, but I want to let our expert who's in charge of remediation and construction talk about that. Okay, one more question. Harry. Oh, okay, here, this is a good question. For protection, what do? You need to have gloves, obviously, and you don't want gloves that are porous. You need to have them that are, you get your latex gloves, and maybe you have other, then you put those in other gloves that are stronger, so you watch out for that. You want to be very careful, because when I tore out this house, what do you see? And everything you tear out, it's got nails. You get punctured. There was somebody at Second Baptist who cleaning out one of the houses, got punctured. 5 days later, he had staph running up his arm. And so you've got to be very, very careful when you're pulling up all the baseboard and pulling out the sheetrock and all that. And so you want to wear a mask as well, and get one that's rated for mold. I think it's better if you can get, those plastic, man, not just one that just goes over your head. I used that when I was at Second Baptist, and I started sweating. I couldn't breathe out of the thing. I thought I was going to die with the mask on. I had to take it off, then I'm breathing in all the mold, and I could smell mold and taste it for the next day in my food and in my breath. It was horrible. So, and then make sure you're covered all the way. Don't leave anything open. You don't. And then when you get through, you take that immediately, and if it's all filthy, in some cases you might just. I know people just throw it away. They got work clothes, they just throw them out. They don't want to drag anything into their house. But you can make sure you wash it. Don't drag it through your house and leave it in the basket in the bathroom. So make sure you get that washed. But that's what you can do. You got to protect yourself and have a good covering on your head, because when you're cleaning up those homes, especially the longer they've been underwater, there are mold colonies everywhere. And then I'm at this house, and this guy gets out it's covered with mold, and so he gets out his saw and starts going, and all that stuff's flying, and that's just terrible. So you've got to be very, very careful. I'm warning you that. And obviously, in some cases, you just got to grit your teeth and say, I don't have any choice. I've got to do it. But do everything you can to protect from breathing this stuff in or coming in contact with it. Oh, yes. If you get a puncture, get a tetanus shot. I didn't get it's not going to hurt you to get a tetanus shot. So get one just in case. But obviously, if you do prick yourself or anything, you want to do that. And you want to wash that out well. And that's dangerous for not only tetanus, which is probably less likely you're going to get tetanus than you're going to get a bad staph infection that's resistant to antibiotics from those pathogenic. Okay, I'm going to introduce right now Mr. Toner Kirsting. Toner Kirsting is known as the House Whisperer. He knows construction and remediation, so let's give Toner a round of applause. Thank you, Toner.
I'm sure everyone's doing a little bit better every single day. That's the hope, isn't it? That every day we get a little farther along than we were the day before. When we look at where we were 2 weeks ago, it's amazing how far we've come. I spent yesterday and the day before in Beaumont. They are 10 days behind us. So wherever you are now, imagine where you were 10 days ago. But how often do you hear Beaumont on the news? We don't. We don't. And how supportive is Beaumont's economy to Houston's economy? You know, Beaumont sweats for Houston. That's the term. They make our oil. They do the processing. They are our roughnecks. And it's amazing. So I'm happy that we're in a community like this. I'm happy that the doctor gave us an opportunity to talk. I live in the other K, not Katy. I live in Kingwood. So we are right there with you. I know. I live on the San Jacinto River. It came within 2 blocks of my house, just south of our elementary school. So I've been there helping my neighbors move through this process. And when the doctor called me and asked if I would like to talk, I had a little trepidation. We are a private organization. Generally, when someone comes to us, they come to us with 2, 3, 4 connections. The knowledge that we possess is very singular to us. And I had that discussion with him. I said, I'm afraid to bring myself into the general view. And he took a moment and said, well, let's think about how we're going to be able to help. And he's just like me. He has a business to run. And can he expose himself to 100% of everyone? But we have an obligation to bring the knowledge and the data that we do have and bring it to the public and have faith that this is going to work out and that we're going to be able to serve the people that we can. And the biggest thing that I've found in the last 2 weeks at the busiest time of my business ever is the understanding that we get from someone when I get a voicemail and I can understand they're distraught and they get an email back from or a text back from me saying, I got your voicemail and I apologize. I cannot call you back. But if you send me an email, we will get to you as soon as possible. And the next text back is, I understand. Thank you. That's amazing. So I appreciate it. And I'm here to try to bring to light some things that you may not know about and see if it can help a little along the road. So what I do, I'm a building forensics specialist. There's not a lot of us out there that do what I do. But pre-Harvey, my normal day is phone call rings. Hey, we have a house, and for 10 years, we cannot figure out what's going wrong with it. And we don't know where to go. We've had the AC contractor, the insulator, the insurance company, lawyers, voodoo people, burning sage. I don't know what's going on with this house. And we heard about you. You got a goofy name, and we Googled you, and can you help us? And that's what I do. I go out to structures and remove all of the hinted data and influenced opinions and say, hey, this is the reality of our situation. And we have a very good reputation of finding that resolution quickly and not just saying, hey, look, that's on fire, but look, that's on fire, and use a number 4 size bucket, half salt water, half fresh water, dump it 3 times a day for 15-minute intervals, and it will go away forever. That's my job. So we possess a very finite set of skills. And the way that we're being utilized is we can go into a structure and say, hey, this is ready for build back based on not what the insurance company says, not what the adjuster says, a catastrophe adjuster who rolled in there sleeping in the backseat of his car. That's the guy we're going to trust for an opinion today? He is merely there to put a piece of paper into the file system. These decisions will be made in underwriting, people you never get an opportunity to shake their hands with. So if I can provide a document that helps influence their process to the benefit of my clients, we're going to do that. And it's not a long document, but it's a very poignant and pointed one. So let's be real about this. Everything I'm going to talk about today, I realized when I was taking my son to his first day of high school last Thursday that he could do this job. because this is nothing more than 8th grade math and science, folks. There's no school you go to for this. There's no engineering degree, architecture degree. I don't need to go to A&M to learn this. I just have to want to learn this, and I have to pull back to all the stuff that I forgot from 8th grade because I was really interested in chicks at that point, not what was going on in science. But it's heat, it's pressure, it's water, it's states of matter, and it's related to the structure that you spend next to work the most time in. You know your home. When you touch its wall, and you've got those little marks where your kids have grown, you're touching the structure that we're talking about. You know how it functions. You know which rooms are hot, which rooms are cold. You know whenever it rains, which windows weep. So we are just as dependent on the data that you can provide us as the data that I can provide you. So it's a lot of interview-based opportunities here. So let's kind of jump into this. I'm going to talk about what I call notes from the field. Even if I had planned this speech a week ago, it would be totally different now. So I'm going to hit some highlights, some things that I would like you to leave with, even if you never talk to me again. So here we go. Okay, stop calling your house a mold loss. Stop calling it a flood loss. You have a black water loss. That is an extremely important definition of the loss of your home. It defines how it is demoed. It defines how it is remediated. It defines how it is paid. Okay? A mold loss is not covered by flood insurance, but black water remediation may be. Black water remediation is more difficult than a mold loss because of all the reasons the doctor just said. It's not just mold spores, it's the microtoxins. It's the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. It's the fact that your neighbor had the biggest petunias on the block, and now you've got 9 pounds of Miracle Grow flowing through your house. Okay? That's the reality of the situation. So it's a black water loss. Please, in your emails, say that. In your correspondence, in your notes, you have a black water loss. We all do know wherever that water line stopped, we're 2 feet up, right? Not 8 inches, not 1 foot. It's 2 feet. So by show of hands, who lives in a house built after 1990? After 1990. Okay. Who lives in a house after 1960? Couple? All right. Older homes are easier to restore than new homes. Okay? Grandma knew what she was doing when she built a house. All right? I live in an 1870 home on Galveston Island that survived the 1900 storm. And it's awesome. And it works really well because the materials were old growth. The technology was there to work in cohesion with nature, not against nature. But the biggest thing was around 1990, the state of Texas required that we started having more efficient structures. And in order to do that, we had to change the envelope and make it tighter and tighter and tighter. Does anyone own a home built after 2015? No? No one? Those are balloons. Those are plastic Ziploc bags zipped up tight. Less than 4% of the leakage. When you burn bacon in a 2016 home, you smell it for a week. Okay? So they're more difficult to restore. So I feel like, okay, I like 1980s. I understand what's going on. All right, I saw Top Gun. All right? I can do something with the 1980s home. I can do something with the 1990s home. But everyone's going to be remediated differently. Okay, so house water comes in 2 feet. Not only are you addressing the inside, but we're addressing the outside. Please, no one power wash your brick. I see power washers going all over town. We just got done with a water loss. Why are we high pressuring water? Why are we putting high pressure water back into our substrate? Why are we doing that? And then when we look at our walls from the inside, and you see the back of that wallboard, that sheathing, that brick or that siding is adhered to, that is just as important to remediate as the sheetrock itself. Almost more important, because on the other side of that piece of sheeting, there is a vapor barrier. So that when your brick or your stucco or your siding absorb water, it comes in, it hits that vapor barrier and runs down to those little weep holes along the bottom of our structure. That means that only 1/2 of the total surface can now release water. And if it doesn't dry out, you cut it out. Okay? You cut it out between the studs. You use a good contractor who knows what he's doing, how to resupport that, and please don't cut your brick ties in the process, because all of a sudden your brick on the outside goes from straight to bowed in the middle. That is a difficult thing to fix right there. All right? You want to ask your contractor before he starts cutting, does he know what he's doing? Do you know what you're going to do here? What's going to happen to the brick? Ask, and then document. All right. So we're treating our walls, right? We're drying them all out. We're drying out what's behind the wall. We're addressing, cleaning off everything on the outside. But we're standing on the largest surface that's affected. Yes, sir?
How do you know that the material between the brick is dry? How do you gauge?
We're going to talk about that exactly. Good question. He wants to know, how do we know that the material between the brick and the back of the stud is dry? So I'll talk about that specifically. But the largest surface that was affected is the surface that we're all walking around on. It's the slab. Does anyone here have a pier and beam home that's not concrete? It's not real popular on this side of town. Okay, good. So I'm going to generalize this to slabs. Concrete is porous. When they pour it into the ground, they put a black piece of plastic to prevent the moisture from coming within. They didn't start doing that as a minimum requirement until 1987. So if you are prior to 1987, you do not have that plastic under your slab. And you may have noticed that sometimes on your tile, you get this white effervescent on your tile grout, just in normal living conditions, or if you, or on your laminate wood floors or on your pre-finished wood floors. That's because there's something called hydrostatic pressure. All the water underneath the ground is trying to come up through pressure back to the surface where it originally could. The water could come to the surface before your house was there. Just because you put a big old chunk of concrete on top of it does not mean that it doesn't want to try to do that again. It wants to go back to its original condition. So it will push its way up through that concrete. So it's been 2 weeks. It's been really cool outside. We've been blessed that we've had really nice weather until today with temperature. So good working conditions. But we're going to have to observe that slab. And the same thing that you're cleaning your walls with, you need to clean your slab with. Okay? All right. We probably have a good number of one-story homes here, or one story with a second floor bump up. And I know that the news reports have said run your HVAC system to dehumidify your home. Your HVAC system is the most expensive appliance in your home. It is designed to run in an optimal situation. So now you are asking your HVAC system to run in a non-optimal situation. And if it's a shared system up and down, then everything you are sucking in through the return air on the first floor will be going to the supply air on the second floor. So it is important that you notate that. It is important that you notate that you utilized your HVAC equipment to control the moisture in your home. Because when it breaks 3 years from now, because you abused it today, and you still have leftover on your flood policy, or if you have found yourself into an opportunity for compensation, I want to pre-hold that. Let's put a pin in it. Because it's going to be a really easy way for us to verify if your AC system became deficient based on the Harvey loss. And it's because we can chemically test the coil and look for the addition of sheetrock dust. Gypsum is a very, very easily identified mineral. It's basically just used in this and schoolhouse chalk, and I haven't seen schoolhouse chalk in a house in a while. So please, I would ask you that when it's cool outside, don't run your AC system, and eventually you do need to have a water restoration company with a no-joke dehumidifier do the dehumidification for you. You don't need the conditioning, you need the dehumidification, okay? We want a big dehumidifier. Yes? No, we've already had enough water. So what we want to do is we want to wash it gingerly. We want to sweep off the dust. We want to wet dry back the surface. Then I recommend, just like if you were trying to treat mold, you don't walk up to mold with your big old sprayer of bleach and go, because all that's going to do is take that airborne mold and go out to the surface. It's wipe. You dampen a rag with either Microban or a bleach solution, big towel, and it's Cinderella. Like this, across the ground. Clean it off. Yes, ma'am? Possibly. So I'm gonna get to that. I do try to bring some sunshine towards the end of my conversations. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I hate this guy. All right, we're gonna talk about that. Yes. Yes, ma'am. No, I want you to make a note of it. Everything you do and all your actions should be technically in a log. You want to notate the things that you did. You want to be prudent. If you bought 90 boxes of trash bags, you need to keep that stuff. That all goes towards your loss. If it doesn't go toward your loss, will it go towards your taxes? On your tax relief fund? I don't know. But without notes, without good pictures, it's all hearsay. So I love dropping all these bombs right before the lawyers come on board because they go, oh, okay, let's talk about what Toner said. Okay. So, but it is just prudent to do that. Okay. When you're drying out a house, it's a cyclone. Think cyclone. Fans are not blowing at the water source, they're blowing across the water source. Wet wall, you don't just jam it straight at it. You want to glance off the wall. You want at least 2 fans to create a circular motion so that the air will glance off the surface, make that water into water vapor, atmospherically into the air, and then be picked up by the dehumidifier and removed. This is more ninja, less boxer, okay? We want to be a little more finessed on it. The actual water restoration instructions that a certified restorator does, they're online. You can watch them. And it's never just put this thing right towards the water and hope it comes out okay. And it takes time, and it takes moving it, and it takes more time. So we have not been to a home yet that said it's dry, that's actually dry. And if you know someone who's sheetrocking their house already, wow. Unless they own a water restoration company themselves, that's highly suspect. So, all right. Microban. Microban's everyone's fan. You can get it at Granger. They have a ton of it. But with you guys at the end, I know that when I get done making dinner and I look at my kitchen countertop and it's a wreck, I grab my Lysol and I spray it down. Can I walk away from it? Is it clean? What am I missing? Wiping it. Just spraying cleaner on a dirty surface just makes it a wet, dirty surface. Without wiping, you have not done anything. You've made yourself feel better. That's what you've done. Now, has it improved the situation? Yes, it has, because now it's soaking up in Microban. But eventually that's going to evaporate off and not really do as much as we want. Remediation contractors should be spraying it down and wiping it off. All surfaces, the sheetrock, the baseboards, the door jambs that you left there because you don't want to pull your hinges off, and your slab. Oh, the poor slab, the often neglected slab. So, spray it down, wipe it off. Okay, so how do you know if you're dry? How do you know if you're dry? It is not just to be dry, it is to be dry and maintain. We want to maintain this moisture level in the home. So when someone calls us up and says, we're dry, come on, you need to get over here like right now. The restoration company just left. We'll say, sure, we'll be there in 5 days. So think about it like this. You have a dry stud, and the water restoration company took it down to the minimum dryness of 11%, saying it's 11%, it's dry. And then they took down the bottom plates to 11%. Those are dry. Check, check, pin check, pin check, pin check. We're good. Here, pay us now, please. That's what their goal is, guys. Let's be honest. They're there to move on to the next home. They're not being malicious, but they have to have a place to stop. So then I wait 5 days to get out there, and now that long bottom plate has taken that 11% moisture through capillary action, just like a celery stalk and a Bloody Mary, up into those studs, and those are back at 18%. You have to overshoot to maintain. I recommend 8% or less on everything. I recommend your indoor humidity to be in the 30s. You're not going to do that. You will blow your AC system up if you try to do that. It's not going to happen. It'll only happen through mechanical and professional dehumidification. Okay? All right, so now you're dry. You're ready to go. Are we going to mold test? We have a realtor, I believe, coming on after me. And the question that gets asked of me is, how do I protect my house for resale? I don't know. When I served the city of Fort Worth after the tornado ripped it up, they wanted, all the homeowners asked me for a document. Can you give me a document that says this house is tornado free? I'm like, oh, it's a horrible business plan to begin with. And no, I can't. There is no certificate. There is no golden ticket out there that someone has that says your house is certified dry. Your house is certified mold free. There is merely a snapshot in time when it is evaluated. Yes, sir. I saw a hand. Yes, sir.
Just to go back to drying the house.
Sure.
I've been told by my air-conditioned person, set it at 79 degrees heat, open up the windows, have the fans blowing outwards to kind of get the air out. Is that accurate?
So that's called kiln drying. It's a commercial technique. When we go into a structure, if a Walmart got damaged, then where they can't remove substructure, metal structures, all this stuff, it's more difficult than what a home provides. Then we shut all the doors and shut all the windows, and we pump that bad boy up to 105 degrees so that we evaporate everything off. That would work. 79 degrees with the windows open is not going to get that structure necessarily hot enough. I appreciate his effort. I really do. That was not a bad idea. I just don't want you to hinge your drying hopes on something like that. So, we got a lot of hands going up. If you don't mind, I'm just going to plow through the rest of this stuff and then let you guys just go crazy, okay? And then I'm going to be available afterwards because I know we have an agenda. We all have other things we have to go do today. Okay, so dry and maintain. Are you ready for mold testing? Here's the deal. It's not just mold testing. It's a black water loss. So if you call up a hygienist and you actually get one to pick up the phone, the good ones will ask you, have you sealed your materials? If you say no, they will not come test your home because we need a stabilized indoor environment prior to testing. Sealed that's a great, can you define sealed? No. What we can do is there are guidelines you follow by a remediation contractor to pre-seal the structure. So if I was to look at a home that was all opened up, it would be covered in white pigment because it has been agitated, then microband, then wiped twice, all surfaces, including the floor, then dried thoroughly, then sealed with pigment, which is like shellac product. It's made by Kills. There's a couple other ones out there. Now they would come in and test. Here's what happens if you fail. If you fail your mold test, you go on the state registry as a mold home, and you stay on it until you get a clearance certificate. That is the only certificate that a person can provide, and that is provided by the hygienist. So if you fail, then the hygienist has to write a protocol. The protocol has to be followed by a state licensed mold remediation contractor. Then he has to come back and retest again, and hopefully you pass. And then your house comes off that registry. If not, it will perpetually stay on this registry. And if you look on page 5 of the doctor's handouts, towards the bottom, the last 2 paragraphs, the world and market of mold testing is very, very inconsistent. And it's not as accurate as we would hope. And how your home tests now may not be how your home tests in the future. So the last bit of information I'm going to give you is you will not know how your home is going to permanently behave for 5 seasons. 5 seasons. Just like our bodies behave differently in the summertime, springtime, fall, winter, so does your home. Just wait until you start turning on your heat. Remember whenever you guys turn on your heat for the first time in the winter and you smell that burn? And that's the dust burning off your coils, your heat exchanger? That's your whole house. So we may be mold-free, we may be dry, we may have sheetrock, baseboard, new cabinets, countertops. The heat comes on, and now it stinks. So what I would encourage you to do is to be prudent, take good notes, but prepare yourself that you may not get this done right the first time. And you're not alone. There will be lots of folks who will be dealing with small repairs and smaller repairs and smaller adjustments for a couple years. And that's okay. I suggest you learn how to run a sheetrock knife. You buy a good compound miter saw, and you learn all those things that maybe you didn't focus on before, because most of the repairs to your home are rudimentary in nature. They're not hard. We can cut sheetrock. We can float. We can rent a compound miter saw. We can do a lot of stuff on our own, or we can hire somebody. But I suggest you learn how to do as much of that as you can, because going forward, most of your repairs are going to be minor, and it will be easier if you say, oh, yeah, it kind of stinks in there. I opened it up. Oh, yeah, we still have a wet baseboard or wet bottom plate in here. I'm going to cut that thing off with my saw. I'm going to replace it with a piece of treated wood. I'm going to replace this sheetrock tape float bed. I'm done in 2 weekends. Now you're empowered. Okay? So I'm going to take 5 questions. Is that okay? And then I'm going to make myself available. Yes, ma'am. Yes, right there. 2? Okay. That's okay. Say that again, I'm sorry. The filter change? Okay, and what's your second question? Hardwood furniture, okay. So her question was, will the change of your air filter help? It's not most definitely going to hurt, but do not go buy the air filter that's the big, giant, pleated, I'm the killer air filter that guarantees. Don't do that. You want the cheapest, nastiest, down and dirty, no joke filter and buy them by the box load. Because if you change them out every 48 hours, that's going to be more effective than having this comfort that you have an AC filter that's going to do the job for you. Cheap is better, more is better on the replacement. So, and then on hardwood furniture, so most hardwood furniture is attached to a soft good product. So even on a really good hardwood chair, if you flip it over, there's going to be a leather bottom covering up all the mortises and screws. So if it's attached to a softwood product, you have to ask yourself, can that softwood product be removed and I still want to keep this hardwood product? And hardwood, is it painted? Is it sealed? Is it exposed? So if you just have to keep your mom's hope chest that was made out of oak and you've cleaned it, you've wiped it down, do not bring it back into your home for at least a year. You will leave it in your garage and observe it. Okay? Now, you might say, this thing's been here for 6 months, and it's Thanksgiving, and I want this buffet back in here for my turkey. That's okay. Just, it might be Harvey turkey. That's all. Okay? Check it. A lot of times, most hardwood furniture is not 100% hardwood. I mean, if it is, then I think it's totally worth taking care of it. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Tile floors. Okay. So tile floors, first off, is it porcelain? Is it ceramic? Is it natural stone? A natural stone floor is going to be more resilient than anything else. Because in nature, it gets dry, it gets wet, it gets dry, it gets wet. But the bed below it, how it was installed, is a man-made product. So a mortar bed itself will dissipate moisture. So let's say it all dries out. The contaminants, though, that were in that water are still in that grout, in that mortar bed, in that tile. So I would ask yourself a question. If this is the tile in your kitchen, and this is the tile in the room that you are mostly naked in, is this the tile you want to be in? Okay? I'm sorry if you guys pictures me naked when I said that. I apologize. Okay, yes, ma'am. Travertine floor. So a marble floor. Yes. How much water did you have? 2.5 feet, then yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yep. I understand that, and they're trying to protect their overall limitations. Okay, but now with some research, we'd be able to determine what the subbed of that is. Very few times do we have travertine directly on glue down travertine, and even if we did, then so travertine historically is installed on strips. If it's installed on strips, then we have little pockets of rivers underneath our travertine. So I would say remove it. If it's not, it's on a mortar bed, and that's an exceedingly porous surface, I would say remove it. So, yes, sir, the tape right here with the giant hand. That was awesome.
Blackwater loss.
Yes.
Instead of mold or flood, so if you did, just curious, you didn't have flood insurance, but there was black water loss. Technically, anything that was damaged?
That's a good question for your representation. I would say because they're going to know where it came from. It was flooded, so that's pretty obvious. The main reason why I said that is the remediation techniques are completely different for black water loss than a clear water or a gray water. It's more of a slash and burn kind of technique. Last question. Yes, ma'am. Bleach. Yeah, so microban is an elevated bleach. It has some other agents in it that keep it from just evaporating away. Now, remember, straight bleach on its own, you don't want to inhale a lot of straight bleach on its own, so it's generally diluted. So for bleach itself works great, but because it's diluted, it will take multiple treatments. Whereas microban still has some of the same agents as bleach, but it has a longer stabilizer in it so that it remains on the surface longer so that it can remove those products. So same thing, though, bleach and wipe. Bleach and wipe. I wipe my counters, you wipe your house, okay? So I'm right at the 15-minute mark. Thank you guys very much for letting me talk. I'm going to be over here and available, and my contact information or my organization's contact information will be available through Dr. Hotze's site, okay? Thank you.
Did you find that helpful? Okay. Toner, come here. I want to make sure we have good. Let's go with our takeaways on this. The first thing you said, and I think it's really important because I stripped down a home, and we're talking about you take all the sheetrock out, but you got brick, right? And between the brick and the studs, you've got boarding.
Sheeting.
You got sheeting there, and guess what? That's all sopping wet.
Correct.
So you cannot go and sheet just because you can't go sheetrock because now you've got all that wet there. And if your home is built after 1987 or
hot to cold, wet to dry. Wet wants to get dry. So if you have a dry piece of sheetrock with a wet piece of sheeting behind it, it's gonna find its way to the dry piece of sheetrock.
So, and I don't know, you're talking about tearing. I don't see how you get away without tearing your brick out and redoing the whole thing.
That is a very traumatic, because you can't tear out the bottom part of your brick without the rest of it coming down. So, but it is very capable to cut out that sheeting and replace it. We do it on remodels, we do it on fire jobs all the time, and it's not that difficult actually. It just takes a lot of elbow grease. That's all. And I actually have a standard that's being written by a really good do I need a microphone? My mother always said I have a natural microphone voice. So I have a standard that's being written by an architect with some very good diagrams, and I'll make sure I share it with the group, okay, of how you can get that done. OSB especially. OSB is, think about all the surface area of that oriented strand board. Yeah, it's spongy. So.
And remember, these pathogenic bacteria from black water get into those pores, and you got pathogenic bacteria in there. And the last thing you want to do is go and sheetrock on the inside of your house where you got all these pathogens on the other side between the brick and between your outside wall. And that over time will continue to cause a problem in your house and give you what we call sick house syndrome. You've heard of sick building syndrome? Well, you get a sick house syndrome, and that's what you don't want. The second big takeaway is make sure the house is dry under 8%, right?
Yes. Overshoot so that you can have what's called bounce back and moisture. There's always moisture bounce back through your slab or whatnot, and some of this will not happen for a couple seasons. So we want to give your house a little bit of wiggle room so that when it does, remember, hot to cold, wet to dry. So when it's really hot outside next summer and it's nice and dry inside your home, all of those bits and pieces from your slab through your walls will be trying to come into the structure just through 8th grade science.
How do you keep your house below 30%?
You have to use a commercial dehumidifier and a water restoration company. Those are very specific instruments and tools. So.
Thank you, Toner. Now I want to ask. I have cards on the table, and I'm going to have his talk written out for you, and we'll send you a copy of the key points. So if you'll take a minute, fill out your card, fully fill out your card, and then we'll collect those cards. Please be doing that right now if you could. I'm going to take a minute for you to fill out your card. I want to be able to get you information on health information. I want to be able to get you information from Toner on remediation and reconstruction and the pitfalls you need to be thinking about. Because a lot of things he talks about, I didn't know. Nobody. I mean, we don't know. We don't think about it. We got a dry house. Got to clean. Now we got a house that's been flooded, and we've got a bad situation here. We've got to make sure we get it right if we're going to keep the house. Toner, are any houses, if they've been underwater a certain period of time, going to have to be demolished?
So that's total loss. When is a total loss? So the first thing I tell you is if you have a mortgage.
Here, talk about this.
If you have a mortgage, you have a financial obligation to maintain your structure. You can't walk away from a structure that's the bank owns because they can call it due. And I mean like, give me all my money due. Okay? So you have a responsibility to maintain that structure first and foremost. Total loss, if you have flood insurance and you've got a $250,000 policy and your house is less than $250,000, that's probably a total loss. But is there a house that you cannot rebuild? I will tell you no, because I live in a 1900 storm survivor. And very few of them, outside of fire, are going to be completely demolished. Okay? So that's really the reality of the situation.
So people can get their houses back.
We can get your houses back. I fix houses that they think are gone all day long. Some of these may be bigger struggles than others. But we can. I haven't had a house yet that people don't move back into. They may not want to, but they can. So we can, anything with creative thought and process and a little bit of hard work can be accomplished.
And I hope that gives you encouragement, too, because when I looked at the houses, I thought, gee, how are you going to ever get them back? But apparently Toner says that you can get them back. It's not going to come without a lot of hard work, but it can be done. And Toner has got some great ideas on this that he's discussed with us. I want you to get these in I want to give you these in written form, and we will email them to you or mail them to you in hard copy if you'll fill out your cards. So, ladies, why don't we go pick up these cards right now from the folks, if you could? Yes, sir. Company's name is Toner. Your company's name is Snyder. 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 Snyder what? Snyder Engineering? Toner, is it Snyder Engineering?
No, just Snyder. It's energy services, but we're rebranding the Snyder School. It's all going to you'll be able to get it all through the doctor's Facebook.
Lift your cards up if you have your cards, folks, so the ladies can pick them up. Let me have your attention. Georgia is going to make a few brief remarks on what you can think about real estate value. Obviously, if your house got flooded, you're very concerned about the long-term potential of being able to reconstruct your house, remediate it. Can you get value back? How's that going to affect you long-term? So, Georgia, please give her a warm applause, please. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank Dr. Hotze for inviting me to come and talk just briefly today. Becky, could I get somebody to watch the clock for me and give me a 3-minute warning? About 15 minutes? Yeah, 10 minutes or so. Let me know when 10 minutes is up, because there are going to be a lot of questions that are going to be very location specific. That is part of real estate. And not only what area you're in, but what you've even discovered what street you're on can make a difference. So in terms of value, I'm just going to say right up front that a whole lot of what you're going to experience is going to be relative to your specific location. So we kind of clear that up, and then those will be questions that I'll be here afterwards to be able to answer anything that is very location specific.
Let me mention one thing. While Georgia is speaking, I am going to give each one of you all 5-day supply of what we call the Hotze Power Pack, which will help you with detoxification. So we're going to give you all some vitamins. How's that?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about your investment. How many of you would say that your home is your largest, if not close to your largest investment in life? Hence the concern. And I wish that I had a magic answer for you. I'm much like Toner. I was a little hesitant to say, yes, I will come and stand up there and speak, because I have nothing definitive to tell you in terms of what your value is going to be next week, 6 months, even a year from now. I can give you historical data, but I have a feeling you're all up to here with information, numbers, percentages, and all of that. I will tell you, though, that because of the area that we're in, the good news is you're in this area. In terms of home values, it is a much sought after area, and I do believe that it will continue to be in the future. So there's hope there. There's a lot of hope simply because of where you are. So first of all, I want to address just real briefly your current mortgage. As it was mentioned, you have an obligation to a mortgage company. If you do not own your home outright, you have an obligation to them with that product. That being said, what can you do if you're trying to scrape together the money to do what you need to do in the meanwhile? Most of you may already know this, but just in case there are some here who don't, the mortgage companies and or servicing companies are offering a couple of months, is the typical across the board, of mortgages, not free, because they're going to tack them on to the end of the loan, okay? But if you contact them and you let them know that you were affected, they're giving 2 to 3 months of mortgage-free time. So what they'll do is they'll not take the payment for the next 2 to 3 months, and it varies company to company. You'll have to contact them. If they don't, I highly recommend that you turn them in. And I'm not real big on that kind of thing, but I would tell you that if they are not, is there anybody who's contacted their servicing or lender and they will not? Let me give you a phone number. I cannot guarantee, and probably your attorneys are going to be much more help with that. I stay in my lane. I am a real estate broker. I am not an attorney, but I do have a phone number that we've been given, and yes, I don't see it on here, but I'll get it to you. If you need that number, please see me, because there is a place to report that and misbehavior of any kind on a servicing company on mortgages. Okay, so that being said, there's a little bit of relief there in terms of the financial on that. How many of you are in temporary housing right now? A good number. Okay, all right. If you're not, and after you've gathered all your information and maybe heard some of the things today, and you decide maybe I should be, do that quickly, very quickly. Because what is happening now, of course, this makes sense, is that we have a lot of displaced homeowners, and they are either seeking apartments or another home to lease. Our brokerage is small, but within the first 5 days after Harvey, everything that we could get our hands on to lease was gone in terms of homes. Most of us are homeowners. We don't really want to go back to an apartment, but we do what we have to do at this particular time. The apartments, in as many as there are out here, they will be full before another 30 days, because people will begin to realize they can't live in what they thought they could handle. It gets to be a little too much. So temporary housing, if you don't have it, seek it out quickly before it becomes non-existent in the area. Okay, the other opportunity that some of you might have is that you might be able to go ahead and invest in a second home. Now, not everyone will be able to do that. You might have the cash to do that. You might invest in something smaller than what you currently have, or it could be equivalent to. But that being said, you will bear in mind as you purchase that you do not want another home that's in a flood-prone area. So think smart. Diversify just a little bit. No. So just keep that in mind if that is a possibility. And you could qualify for 2 mortgages if you have a mortgage. We've been contacted by a number of people who either just want to pay cash for another home and it's theirs and they can live in it while whatever happens with their current home. Then that's an opportunity as well. And if you buy correctly, it will end up being a good investment because, think about it, once you move back into your home now, then you've got an investment home there that you can either sell or you can begin to lease out. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, in terms of selling, how many of you have thought, I think I might just sell this thing as is? Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm going to give you a caution here. In the state of Texas, we are ethically, as real estate brokers and agents, we are ethically held to a high standard in terms of taking care of our clients. Not everyone upholds that standard. At this particular point in time, I just have a couple of cautions for you. If you are considering selling your home as is, please do not get into a contract with an investor without having a real estate agent, a competent, someone who has been recommended to you by multiple sources. Look at that contract and advise you of what the ins and outs are. Because I'm going to give you an overall picture, not to say there's not investors out there who are straight up, but the majority are not. And so that being the case, you need either an attorney to review those documents or you need a licensed real estate agent that is familiar with your market and is also capable of giving you some good, solid market advice. Now, do we have a value for your home as is right now? Because isn't that going to be the first question you're going to ask? Is, well, what do I sell it for? Well, the investors right now are beating our doors down as real estate agents, trying to get us to help them find homeowners who will sell for 30 cents on the dollar. So if you have a home, do the math. If you had a $100,000 home, they would like to pay you $30,000. Now, you say, well, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. Here's how it works. They know you won't. So they'll offer you 50. Some of them may even offer you 70 cents on the dollar. But that's an offer, and that's all it is. And let's say that you agree, you sign off on it. It's a number you can live with, all right? Then what happens is paragraph after paragraph in that contract gives a buyer a lot of opportunities to walk away. In the state of Texas, the buyer is much more protected as a whole than the seller is in terms of walking away from a signed contract. Be very, very careful, because if you think that, oh, this is a great price, you see that price there. Understand that there are multiple ways for the buyer to walk away, and usually they don't want to walk away. What they want to do is to beat you down to the point where you will take a lower offer at the opportunities that they have to come back and renegotiate with you. And again, just based on the contracts, there are multiple opportunities for them to do that. Representation, if in that sense, is well worth whatever it would take. You know, in the state of Texas that as a buyer, representation's free. It doesn't cost you anything to be represented. Why wouldn't you? As a seller, that's typically the one that picks up the real estate fees. However, with the investors, you'll discover that a real estate agent can be very, very flexible on that. And if they say not, maybe you might want to research out a couple more people, because the investors they just do things a little bit differently. So please keep that in mind and make sure you're protected either through an attorney or through a well-seasoned licensed real estate professional. Be aware, when an investor comes, understand that it's just that. They're an investor. They are here to make money. So if you keep that in mind, I think you'll be a little more willing to get some other opinions in there on that, if that's what you choose to do. Okay? Have them again, make sure that you understand that if you sell for this amount on this day and you're thinking and revolving all of your future plans around that much money on the close date, please be aware that that rarely will happen. And don't plan according to that. Okay? Let's talk about the tax impact a little bit. How many of you, 10 minutes is up? Okay. How many of you have questions about the taxes? Okay, then maybe we can do that separately. I'm just going to give you a quick little umbrella statement there. What we're being told by the taxing authorities, if you have completed your repairs by the end of this year, then there is no change to your tax value. So 2017 taxes will already have been billed into the next few weeks. And for 2018, you've already, quote, rehabbed the home and it's back now to market value. So there will be no tax relief on the value of your home, on your real estate taxes. Okay, can you give me? Okay, so that does remain to be seen then, whether or not that. Those two. Okay, so then that is something to be aware of. I don't know how many of you are in Fort Bend. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, what she said was there was a correction to that information because Fort Bend County has already applied the drainage district, and be aware that you have multiple taxing entities. So whoever applies to correct your value could potentially do that for you. No, ma'am. What I was saying was it's likely not, unless you're not going to rehab it until after the first of the year. Because if you rehab it this year's taxes are already set in stone. You're going to get that bill shortly. Okay? For next year, January 1st, you've got a rehabbed home. So it would not be devalued. There would be a caveat to that, and that is if your neighborhood has such a disastrous result of Harvey that it becomes what they call a declining neighborhood. If that's the case, that's a whole different scenario. Now, most of us don't want to be caught in a declining neighborhood, but that being the case, that would change that scenario. And it could be the government may change that whole thing. I mean, it may be that it's a very easy process and more of those taxing authorities may get on board with something. Okay, so that's something to watch because I'm not a tax expert. So I would just tell you, watch the taxing situation. Keep your eye on it. If you never have before, do so going forward. And then I have just one other thing, and that's protecting your investment. And Toner already did a beautiful job on this. Just make sure that you document everything you did. Here's how I think our buyers are going to go moving forward. They're going to ask for your elevation, first and foremost. What's the elevation of the home? And right along beside that, they're going to ask for what kind of remediation you did and how can you prove it. Be expecting to pay for air quality testing on your home when a buyer's going to want to start negotiating for that as well. So and just protect your investment and document everything that you're doing. Do it according to whatever guidelines that you have in front of you, and we have some fabulous ones today. And then make sure when you do sell to protect yourself from litigation, disclose. Do not try to hide the fact that your home was flooded in any way, shape, or form. It will land you in court. So that is going to be a huge thing. There are opportunities. In fact, you're required by law to disclose. Please, please, please do that. Choose your materials carefully. Remember, it's an investment. Most of us do resell, even though we say we're going to live there forever. So make sure as you are rehabbing that you have good advice on the materials to use, how they cosmetically and aesthetically come together, and take heart. I'm sorry that we met in these circumstances. I would have rather you call me because some positive life change has caused you to want to buy or sell. But there is hope. I believe we will rebound. I cannot give you a time frame, but we are still a very desirable area and location. And historically, flooding in this area all the way back to 1979 with Claudette has not impacted on the higher end. And the higher end is 30%. of loss in value. And I don't believe for a minute that we'll go there. I think we're just going to have some recovery time. So I hope that you all can plan accordingly. And if I can answer questions, I'll be here as well. Thank you.
One thing I think we can be proud that we live in Texas and in the greater Houston area. I have a friend of mine, when they had Sandy up there in New York several years back, the trees all fell down and everything. The public was forbidden to go out and do anything to take the trees down. They had to wait for the unions to come in. The people couldn't do anything, and they didn't. They were waiting for the government and for the union to come in and take care of it. One thing about Texans that we're resilient, we're independent, and it's a credit really to our ethos, our belief system, and our philosophy that we're can-do people, we're independent, and all of you all have had friends, churches that have come out. Second Baptist has done a great job, among others, have come out and helped by helping people clean up their homes, providing food, and all kinds of needs. And so before the government, somebody said, I haven't even seen the government one here. Now, how many people have seen the government tearing up and helping people out? Well, it's not. You can't depend upon the government because they're bureaucrats. But we've got our friends and our neighbors and our church members that have come out, and so thank God for that the 95 or 90% of people who didn't get damaged have been willing to help us and help all of you all. So I'm proud to be a Texan for that. And let's give ourselves a round of applause. Now, I think the most interesting topic we're going to cover now is the potential for legal remedies. I'm not an attorney, but I just looked at what happened. Okay, we have addicts in the Barker's Reservoir, and it's supposed to catch the water. It does. And I guess the Corps of Engineers and the Harris County Flood Authority was thinking, well, we're going to let this fill up the reservoirs, and we're not going to let the water out because it'll flood everything downstream, right? Once you let it out there, if we let it out, it's going to flood everything going down all the way down Buffalo Bayou. So they let it flood, and it started flooding, and finally it went out. The reservoirs went out of their banks, and many of you all out here got the backwash from the reservoir. It started flooding, and they went, oh, my goodness, we're going to flood all of Katy. I mean, they thought it was going to back up and flood Cinco Ranch completely. I have friends that were in Cinco Ranch that were told to evacuate. It's coming back here. And then they decided to open downstream, which, of course, what did that do? That flooded everybody downstream. So they held the water here. They made a choice to flood your homes and not let the water go downstream to protect the rest of the city. And then when it looked like the whole dam might break, which would have been you think it's a disaster now, you can imagine if the dam would have broke, what that would have done downstream. There had been 100,000 homes and thousands of lives lost if that had happened. So they made a decision that to back up until the dam looked like it might break. And so they flooded your homes, and then they flooded everybody downstream. They made a choice to do that, to protect the greater good for the whole society. They let your homes get flooded and other homes get flooded. Well, if I said, look, let me tell you what, so my house doesn't get flooded, I'm going to flood your house. I don't think that's fair. Well, we got to do it because it's going to be my house and 20 other houses, so we got to flood one house to save 20 other houses. I can understand how they made that. That was a decision they had to make, okay? That was a real problem. But it's not fair for you to sacrifice your home to protect 20 others if the other 20 others don't want to pay you back and make you whole for your home. Does that seem fair? It seemed like they should, right? Those of us that didn't have our home flooded should be willing to help compensate those that lost their homes to protect our homes. Does that make sense? So I want to introduce to you Jared Woodfield, an attorney, and Terry Yates, both longtime friends of mine for decades, and who will discuss with you this whole concept of potential legal remedies that may allow you. I can't promise anything. They're the attorneys. I don't know how all this works, but you can imagine you all want to be made whole, don't you, whether you had insurance or not. If you lost your house to protect other people's homes, it's only fair, right? Okay, I'm going to have Jared Woodfield and Terry Yates discuss that with you. Give Jared a round of applause.
Thank you, Steve and Terry. Well, and I want to thank Dr. Hotze for even holding this meeting, because what I found, so let's give him a big hand. Thank you, Steve. What we found is throughout the community there's been a whole lot of misinformation on all the areas that you've heard from this morning and this afternoon. And so that's one of the things we want to do, is just provide information to you, any questions you may have with respect to what you're going through. And let me tell you, I am so sorry for what you're going through, because I know there are a lot of things that you lost that can be replaced and can be redone, rebuilt, but there are other things that can never be replaced. I mean, we've heard stories of pictures that have been lost that were of loved ones who have since passed that can never be duplicated, or pieces of furniture or clothing that were very special to individuals that can never be replaced. So I know that's happened to many of you in this room, and I'm so sorry for that happening. But we're here to obviously try to do anything we can to help. But really tonight or today is to just tell you what your rights are under the law. So you've heard a lot about different insurance policies probably, whether it be on TV, whether it be on radio, you name it. And the first thing people always bring up is your homeowner's policy. Everybody in this room probably has homeowner's policy, right? If you do, raise your hand. Okay, so we all know that. Now, the problem with that is most homeowners policies are going to originally turn you down when you make a claim. And what are they going to tell you? This is a flood. It's flood damage, and so you're not covered. Well, the first thing you have to look at is homeowners policies cover what's called wind-driven rain. So any water that entered your house via wind, whether your roof was blown off, a window was blown or broken through, and water was blown into your home, and it caused damage to your structure, what they call your dwelling, then that is covered. Typically, their first reaction is to deny coverage. And in the past, when we've dealt with insurance companies, not all, but there have been quite a few who originally want to just say, no, hope you won't come back, and then they won't have to pay out. So do not discount the fact that your homeowner's policy may provide some coverage. And likely, not all, but some. The second thing is flood insurance. Well, the problem there is most folks who live in Harris County didn't purchase flood insurance, right? How many people have flood insurance in here? Okay, very few, because most of us live in areas where our mortgages didn't require us to purchase flood insurance because it rarely floods in our areas, right? And even if you do have flood insurance, if it's a federally backed program, the maximum on your dwelling, your house, your structure is $250,000, and on your contents it's $100,000, and that's if you pay the full premium. You opt for everything. Now, we've run into some individuals who have purchased additional riders to add excess coverage to that through companies like Chubb and others, but that's the very, very, very rare exception. And then a lot of us lost cars. There were over 500,000 folks in this area where your cars were totally destroyed. Now, however, the good thing about that is most of that's covered under your comprehensive policy, although not everybody has that type of coverage. Some people just carry liability, which would not cover it. And so those are the 3 or 4 main policies that we're running into right now, and we're answering questions with respect to. There's a couple of unique policies people have with respect to backflow. So that's something you may have one of those yet. That's something you may look at, because what we're finding for folks, unfortunately, for the folks who have those policies, is that the companies that you paid your premium expecting in coverage during your time in aid are denying it. They're not paying for the folks that we represent. I hope your situation is a little bit different. You don't know yet. Okay, well, for the folks that we've done with, they said, sorry, we're not gonna cover it, and this is an area near Cinco Ranch where it happened. But there's something very unique about this particular hurricane. What's unique about Hurricane Harvey that you didn't see in Ike and some of the other storms that we dealt with is there is a theory called inverse condemnation. Has anybody heard of that? Okay. It's a unique legal term. A lot of you probably may be familiar with the term condemnation or eminent domain. All right, that's when the government in a typical situation comes in and says, we want to build this freeway out in front of your house. We want to build a railroad track in front of your house. We want to have a pipeline easement in front of our house, and we're going to have to take your property. And because we're going to have to take your property, we're going to have to pay you for that property. It's in the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, the very last clause. Go look it up. If they take your property, they're going to have to pay for it. It's where you take private property for a public use, and you're entitled to be compensated for that. In a typical situation, they would file a lawsuit. You would go through a commissioner's court-appointed panel, try to come to an agreement. If you couldn't there, then ultimately it could go in front of a jury of 12 of your peers. Your peers would determine what the damage was that you're owed. That's a typical condemnation case. This is called inverse condemnation. Inverse, and I'll tell you why. So when the addicts or the Barker's reservoirs, when they intentionally made a decision to overflow them to protect either the integrity of the structure, the dam, or the reservoir, or to protect other individuals from being flooded out, they made that decision without asking your permission first. So they knew when they did that, they were going to be flooding out your property. It's a private taking for a public purpose. To protect the integrity of the dam would be one argument they would make in terms of the public purpose, or to protect a greater number of people from being damaged as a result of it. So when they did that, they committed what's called inverse condemnation. They took your property by flooding it out. So at one point, the numbers are they were letting out 2,000 cubic meters per second of water. Okay, that's normal. They upped it. What we're hearing, the figures we've seen, is it was up to 1.16 thousand cubic meters per second of water. So you can only imagine the havoc and damage that may cause. That's why you're hearing from so many individuals who said, I've never been flooded. I went through Ike, I was never flooded. I went through numerous hurricanes and nothing ever happened. But in this case, it happened for the first time. I cannot tell you how many people have expressed that to me. How many people have said, you know, we thought this was a perfectly safe place to be in the event a hurricane came, because when Alicia came through, the homeowners who had it before, or we never had any problems with it. So that's one of the reasons why so many folks were flooded out that wouldn't naturally be flooded out, because of that, what we call inverse condemnation, that public taking of your property. And that's compensable under the law. You're allowed to get compensation for all of your damage, including the damages that were discussed to you today, whether that be Toner and everything that he was describing to you, the remediation, the rebuild, you name it, contents and dwelling. And arguably, and this is an area to be explored, the personal injury damages resulting from damage to your body, the things that Dr. Hotze described, and the things that you will need to do to actually get better and make sure that you protect your health. As Dr. Hotze said, get out of that structure. You don't need to be there if there's mold. There's those 3 types of mold he described for you: Stachybotrys, Penicillium, Aspergillus. None of it is good stuff. And when you heard from Terry and she was talking to you about folks wanting to come in and invest and buy your property, I can tell you some of those folks are coming in and want to lowball and buy it cheaply because they know that they can buy your property and the claim associated with it, go after the federal government and make a whole lot of money. So they got your property, now they got your property rebuilt, and they're sitting pretty. So it's a very, very good investment. So be very, very sensitive to that, because we believe that when you're looking at your whole package of remedies, you look at it this way: what insurance do I have? The insurance that I have, what does it cover? And then, am I in that area that was affected by this inverse condemnation issue that Jared just described? So those are things that you need to evaluate. And remember, never sign off on anything until you are sure you are getting what is justly entitled to you. Because I know a lot of people are coming out right now, and some adjusters, and trying to get you to sign up on documents and trying to get you to make commitments. And once you've done that, a lot of times that's it. It's over. You can't come back because they come in and say, hey, look, you signed on the dotted line. It's too late. And so what we're doing now is just advising people on their rights, informing you on the remedies that you potentially have. Terry will talk to you a little bit more about some of the unscrupulous things that what I call fly-by-night contractors are doing, coming by from your homes, folks to try to get your business, folks that aren't bonded, asking you to sign over insurance checks, things of that nature. Be very, very cautious about that, because people are right now in their time of need. They're desperate, they're hurting, and they're more likely to fall for that. So that's what Terry's going to address in just a second. And I want to introduce just a couple of folks who are with me. Bud Wiesedep in the back there. He's one of the attorneys with our firm. Amy Riscala, I saw right there. Cindy Taylor, who's with us. Andy Taylor's over there. Let's see, who did I miss? I know I saw Ken Kennedy back there in the back. I may have missed somebody else too. But we're going to be around for any questions that you might have afterwards. I'm going to let Terry speak here because I've probably spoken way too long. But we'll be set up over here. If you have questions, come to us at any of these tables. You have questions about your policies and potential remedies that you may have under the law. We're happy to answer those questions. Yes, ma'am. Right. Now, that's interesting. So here's how that analysis works. So there's a couple of areas that you noticed, and the best way to answer your question as to whether or not you were damaged as a result of an addict's release, a barker's release, or anything up in the Conroe area released is, am I a home that was flooded during Alicia? Am I a home that was flooded during Ike? And if you weren't, but you were this time, there's a very good likelihood it was a result of that. Now, what we do is we bring in engineers. And what our engineers do is they plot your home, and they look at the reservoir that's near your home in the release, and we trace the water flow. So, for instance, all along the Buffalo Bayou, in fact, the building we were in, we were over in 3 Riverway. Somebody knows, right next to the Omni Hotel. You're 1 Riverway, so you're my neighbor. We're in 3 Riverway on the 7th floor, and our lobby took on 7 feet of water. 7 feet of water. The Omni Hotel, I'm told, covered the 1st and 2nd floor. And 1 Riverway took on a lot of damage too. Yeah, Tipperary. Yeah, and that's happened to a lot of us too. It happens to a lot of us. Our suite was fine, thank the Lord. But I know for a lot of businesses all around this community, they were destroyed. And that's another thing that we look into. If you're a business owner and your business flooded and you don't have business interruption coverage, which most people don't, that you're, in our opinion, you're entitled to compensation under the law. And then we had talked a little bit about mud districts and some issues there, but there is a whole host of issues that need to be analyzed that are unique to every single home, because every one of you is uniquely positioned in terms of the coverage that you have, in terms of where you're located, and in terms of what type of damages you've received. And so if you have any questions about that, please come and talk to us. We'll be here this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry.
Thank you, Jared. Well, I'm going to talk to you in just a second about some of the things to look out for. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize Dr. Hotze's staff, Becky, Stacy. These people gave their Saturdays off to come help us out, so please give them a round of applause. And I even see my doctor, Dr. Sheridan, at Hotze Health and Wellness. Hey, just a great staff and a great bunch of people. So I'm going to switch gears here. I'm a former prosecutor, so one of the things that Dr. Hotze said, look, let these people know what might be going on out there. Unfortunately, in times of crisis, people like to take advantage, right? They're called storm-chasing scam artists. So you got people from all over the country and all over the world really focusing on places that are hit by destruction, trying to take advantage of people, when they're in shock and turmoil, when they're depressed, when they're, you're just in a state of confusion. So here's some things to look out for. This is what we're seeing out there. Identity theft. There are people trying to get your identity, okay? You may get an email that may look like it's really from your bank or your mortgage company or the government or anybody that may have your information asking you to give their information over the internet. Be very, very careful. Some of these things look very real. Y'all have seen them, I'm sure, right? You're locked out of your bank account. Click here. There's a lot of malware and viruses on those links that'll get in your computer system, steal your data. Same way on the phone. There are people that may be calling you. Their phone numbers are masked where it says government, FEMA, and they'll talk to you on the phone, ask you, for your claim, we need your Social Security number. We need this or that and the other. They're trying to steal your identity. So be very, very careful. It's unbelievable people do that, but it happens, and you've probably been contacted or know people that have had this happen to them. So there are even cases in Houston where people have showed up with FEMA shirts on or jackets. Have y'all heard about that? You see these people shaking their head. Be very careful. Ask for their identification. They'll come out to your house, say they're from FEMA, ask you to fill out this form with Social Security number, and then they're off to the races with your identity, open up bank accounts, trying to drain your bank account. So be very careful of that. Guard that information like you would anything else. It's extremely valuable, and you got to watch out for people who may be trying to steal it. Secondly, vehicles. A lot of you, how many of you purchased a vehicle lately, or going to be purchasing a vehicle because you got yours flooded out? There are scams in Houston already bringing cars in. Some of the cars are from Louisiana. All right, guess what happened over there? So you got unscrupulous people who are buying flooded cars, making them look good, making them run for a little while, bringing them over here, put them on Craigslist or eBay, or put them on a lot and selling them as new cars or good used cars. So before you buy a car, please buy from a reputable dealer, or at least get the VIN, run it, check it out, have a mechanic come look at it, because the last thing you want to get is, you go buy a car and then find out that, it won't take long. You got to figure out things have been flooded out. So that's what you're going to watch out for. Be very careful in buying used cars. Make sure it's from somebody with a good reputation. We saw the Demontrons the other day. Dr. Hotze and I did. So, go to a reputable dealer. Be careful buying cars off Craigslist or eBay or anything like that. And the third big scam is what Jared touched on, is contractors. Tree removal services, remediation people coming to your house, soliciting you, saying, hey, we got some stuff left over from a job, or we got some extra time, give us X amount of dollars up front and we'll do yours, and then they're gone. Or they do a poor job, or they don't do it right. Like Toner said, there are a lot of people out there who, hey, it may be a good time to get in the remediation business. They're making a lot of money and they're holding themselves out as people who go into houses, right? You probably, yeah, hey, this is a good time. I think I'm going to remediate houses, and they don't know what they're doing. So, on contractors, get 3 written bids. Check with the Better Business Bureau. All the agencies in Texas are back up and running, so there are ways to check people out. The best thing is through friends and neighbors. If you don't, get a good source, a referral source, someone who's reputable, someone's going to stand behind their work. We've gotten phone calls already. People have been ripped off. They've given money, and the people don't show back up, or they do shoddy work, or there's a million ways. So while there are hundreds and hundreds of good people to help you and do good work, you got to watch out for the shoddy ones too. And lawyers are probably right there at the top. Watch out for the shady lawyers. We're just above used car salesmen, I think, what people think about our profession. So.
Most people have cell phones. Get a picture of their ID and a picture of the people.
Oh, yeah, that's a good, yeah. People that come up to you? Yeah. So if they claim they're from the government, they're going to have a good issued government ID, not something that looked like, a fifth grader made it. They're going to have with a seal on it. And look, get the phone number. Check them out in D.C. before you give them any information. You can't be too cautious about giving out your personal information like that. So like Jared said, we're going to be around. We're going to be litigating some of these cases with the government, and we'll be glad to help you answer any questions that you have. If you've already given out your identity, talk to me. I can tell you what you do to try to mitigate and stop the thieves from getting in your bank account. Yes, sir.